Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to One Guy Walks. I'm Stuart Moffat, and this is week 5 of the Nielsen-Nelson Kith and Kin project. In this week's video, I'll be doing some mapping of the locations that John Stewart took and recorded in his journal extract. The first thing that I want to show is the document, and here it is. This is the table with all of the dates in the left-hand column. The next column is location and then some notes. Let me bring the screens over here. And I've got a Google My Maps set up, and I'm going to call this John Stewart's Emigration Map. I could add a description later if I want to. Okay, and we know that the first place he is, if I look over here on the left, June 12th, 1820, he's in Greenock, Scotland. So first thing we want to do is get to Greenock, Scotland. So let's go to Greenock, UK. That'll take us into here. And if I change the base map to satellite view for a second, here's the whole built up current coast of Greenock. And if I come out, we kind of zoomed in pretty quickly there, but if I come out from Greenock, you can see that it is up the bay, or the lock from Glasgow, and you have to get out to the Firth of Clyde before you get to the open ocean. And I'll come in and just find a point. If there was an old dock, if that was really obvious, it's not super obvious right now. It could have been down in here. Yeah, I'm not certain. I can adjust these points later. But for now, I will say that this is Greenock, and I do want to put the date. So I'm going to go over here, copy this one. Everything is in 1820, so I'm just going to do that, and then call this Greenock. All right, there's one point. Not bad. Okay, there's a lot of points here. So the next step is Crinan, UK. Yeah, we got there. And it drops me right into this harbor. Again, I don't know where. Oh, let's get down here. That looks like there's a little bit of a canal. And I wonder, you know what? That's probably a pretty good place where, this is obviously built up, but probably a pretty good place where the old port may have been. And we'll go back to here. This is 14th of June, 1820, and put Crinan. I can put descriptive text here, and I will. I'm going to come back around and do that. So there we go. There's Crinan. Come to the base map again. Let's zoom way out here. All right, so here now you can see my two blue marks. I really want them to be numbered. In fact, let's do this first. Let's call this route. I would like these to be numbers, and I think there's a way to do it in here. There's a way to set, oh, there it is, sequence of numbers. That's what I want. And the name. There's another thing I need to do with this Crinan point particularly, and there's a couple other points like this. He leaves Glasgow on the 12th of June and then sails to Crinan, but then he's there for a few days. If I look back here at the table, he's actually there for a week. So they anchored at Crinan on the 14th, and then a week later on the 21st, they sailed from Crinan. So I need to account for that in the text here, and I think what I'm going to do, June 14th to 21st. All right, let's go to the next one. Next one is Oban. What I find pretty cool is there's a lot of shipping lanes. I think these are ferries that come out of Oban still. In fact, when we were there in 2024 in Scotland, we visited Oban, and there's a ferry right down here. So let's go down. I think this is worthwhile here. Let's go to this base map. Stood on this dock down here. So here's a ferry system for sea tours. Again, I don't know if this whole dock was this big or if it was down in here. We'll just drop it right there. And then we'll say Oban. Now we want to take a look again at the dates. Anchors at Oban to take on passengers. So just like Crinan, they come in on the 22nd of June. at Oban. But if you look over here, they leave on the 29th. So again, they are there for a week. So they haven't even left Scotland yet. What are they doing? Are they eating fish and chips? Are they in a hotel? How are they surviving while they're there? Don't know. It would be interesting to find out. So 22nd, 29, they're at Oban, and then they leave Oban on the 29th. And the next thing we know is that on the 3rd of August, so fully a month and a bit later, a month and a week later, they are off the coast of Cape Breton, and the word is that they see land off of Cape Breton. Maybe all the passengers were excited, and then they see land and they ask the ship's captain or one of the crew, what land is that? What are we looking at? And they tell them it's Cape Breton. They didn't tell them it was Newfoundland. They didn't see land off of Newfoundland. They saw land off of Cape Breton. How close do you have to be to see land? I don't know. I'm just going to guess for now that they're probably closer to Cape Breton than they are Newfoundland. And I'm going to put them out here. 3rd of August. And then I'm just going to keep it as Cape Breton. So now I've got 4. I'm going to do one more. They come to near Anticosti, and that is an island in the Gulf of St. Lawrence between New Brunswick and Newfoundland. So they almost are stranded. So we'll put them a little bit closer to the island, and we'll say they are near, well, this is the 10th of August, Anticosti. And save. One of the sailors falls overboard. I'm going to add that one just really quickly right here. Let's see. I'll do another. At 2 a.m., they're almost stranded. At 4 a.m., I'm going to put them a little bit farther inland. Also on the 10th of August, though. And sailor overboard. Okay, we've got a lot more to do. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to zone out, put some music on, and work through this whole table. See you on the other side. I did want to just kind of pause here for a second and make note that he's traveled all that way. Let's zoom back out here again. Right, so I won't go right over to Scotland, but he's come all this way into Quebec City, Montreal, Prescott, Kingston. Then he goes to buy land in Cavan, so he's made it all the way down to Smith's Creek, modern day Port Hope. Then he gets up into Cavan, buys the land, makes his way back to Montreal. I don't know if he went by land or by boat, maybe a combo of everything. Back to Montreal, then gets on a drum boat. Got to figure out what that is. And goes back to Kingston. So this is now his second time in Kingston. And if you come in here and take a look, his first time was about a month previous. On the 10th of September, 4th of September, he's in Kingston. And then down to Cavan, back to Montreal, back to Kingston, and now he's there again on the, number 16, on the 7th to the 10th again. And this time, he's got his children with him. So that initial Montreal to Prescott, Kingston, Port Hope, or Smiths Creek, Cavan, and back to Montreal was by himself while his kids stayed in Montreal. Wow. So a month later, he's back in Kingston, and now he's going to sail on that schooner from Kingston, heading back towards Cavan, or Smiths Creek, and then up to Cavan. And that's when they get caught in the middle of that storm in Lake Ontario. So let's go plot that one. He's arrived at Kingston 7th. He leaves again on the 10th. And by the 11th, they're in the middle of Lake Ontario, as he says, stuck for 25 hours. So let's zoom out here. Lake Ontario is pretty big. And I think before, when he went into Quinte West, he probably traveled by, or the head of the Bay of Quinte, which is modern-day Trenton. Trenton or Quinte West. He probably traveled by land. That was when he was on a steamboat. Is that right? Yeah, left Kingston on a steamboat. So he steamboats through this Z of the Bay of Quinte. And next time he's at Kingston, he's like, let's take the schooner. Maybe it's faster. Maybe it's just all water instead of that last leg by land. So let's put him out in the middle of Lake Ontario, which is about here. But I also want to take a look at that note where he says, a terrible storm, 25 hours in the middle of Lake Ontario, expecting we would go down. The wind finally changed so that they came back to Kingston after being driven within 20 miles of York. York is present-day Toronto. So let's have a little bit of fun with this. Let's get into Toronto, and we'll go take the measuring tool and click from the harbor and come. Here's 20 miles out. Storm in the middle. So this is the 11th of October. And storm, Lake Ontario. Now we can get rid of that measuring. So they come from Kingston out on the schooner. Storm blows them within 20 miles of York. Then the wind blows them back to Kingston. All right, let's keep going here. That's pretty wild. Here's another thing that's happening here. So he's made his way back a couple of times up and down this part of Ontario. On the 18th of October, he goes to Cavan. He's left his children again at Smiths Creek, modern-day Port Hope, traveled to Cavan, went to Cavan, slept at Mr. Page's. 19th of October, lost way in the woods and slept in a tree trunk. And then on the 20th of October, arrived at John Nichols' lot. So here's what I don't know. I don't know where John Nichols' lot is. It took him a day to get there. 2 days, I think. Well, maybe a day, traveling on the 19th. He's at Cavan, sleeps at Mr. Page's on the 18th. On the 19th, he's walking, I guess, or probably walking. Lost his way in the woods, slept in a tree trunk. That's the whole 19th. On the 20th, he arrives at John Nichols' lot. On the 20th in the morning, got to John Nichols, where Alex Spears, John Bow, and Robert Decky for some time had been expecting me. Let me bring this up on the screen so you can see where it's at. On where they had been expecting me on the 21st, I gave up my bargain of John Nichols' lot, probably meaning that the deal fell through. And on that night at Mr. Page's. So he makes his way back to Mr. Page's on the 21st, leaves on the 23rd, back to Smith's Creek, where he'd left his children, and then he basically is on Plan B. And Plan B is go on the 25th to the Hamilton Courthouse and drew east half of Lot 14 in the township of Otonabee. And then he finally gets to Rice Lake. Bad weather keeps him there for 4 days. They finally cross over. And I've said this before, on the 15th, we got into our own in health, thank God. So I've just got a few more things to map there, this whole process. And again, I don't know where John Nichols is. I can probably do some research for land ownership in that county, but that might take a while. So I'm just going to drop that in to Cavan. He goes back to Smith's Creek. This is now his third time in Smith's Creek. He goes to get his kids. Let's put, I think it's the 23rd. I think he got to Cavan in a day before. So 21st October, back in Smith's Creek. Collects his children. And then he's got to go to the Hamilton Courthouse. I need to do some research as to where that is. So let's dive back in. Yeah, this makes a lot of sense now for me, finding out that the Hamilton Courthouse was in Cobourg. This is an approximate location. I'm doing a lot of work in Claude to say, where did these things exist back then? And this is the cross street where it is right now. It says it was on the northwest corner of Elgin and Burnham. Northwest corner of Elgin and Burnham. And that's where the courthouse was. I think when I detail each of these locations and find out what I can for this family history research report, I will probably be looking for historical records, maybe even an old drawing or photograph. Well, maybe not in 1820, but an old drawing of that courthouse, or maybe other evidence of its existence, but it's on that corner. I really like how Claude does this. Takes the question and understands the context. I'm not looking for modern, I'm looking for old. It starts doing searches, and then, it starts doing inference of what it's searching for. Then it starts searching, and then it kind of takes a second pass. It's like, oh, I've found some things, and then boom, I end up down in Cobourg. I love how Claude does this, and frankly, I think it does it better than ChatGPT. This is now in my conversation, so now when I go back to do sort of the in-depth finding of where that courthouse was, I can use some of this. It's the Newcastle District Courthouse and Jail, built there in 1802, 1807, small village of Amherst. Oh, Asa Burnham donated the land for the courthouse and jail, so that's why it's called Burnham road or street. And then in 1808 became Cobourg. Cool. He ends up, I'm going to guess, not far from Gore's Landing. That was one of the places where people crossed. So he ends up, I think, over on this side, more towards Keene. I still have to figure out where his lot might have been. I don't know if it was down this way near Hiawatha or if it was up more towards Keene. I tend to think it was towards Keene. So let's go into Gore's and let's just assume that he is doing this again. TBD on the research on this one. 3rd of November, Rice Lake. It ends up having to stay there for 4 days in Mr. Foley's shanty, and then eventually makes his way across. Now I am going to place him a little bit more closer to Keene here, and this will need to be verified where he ends up coming in and landing, because I don't know where that lot 14 is. I got to do some checking on the old documents. And he eventually comes 15th November, our own shanty. Just having trouble spelling today. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's video. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks for sticking around. And if you have stuck around, please remember to like, subscribe, and when you subscribe, hit the bell so that when I release a new video, you get notified right away. And leave a comment if you've got a family history story, maybe one of your ancestors, maybe even yourself, of an emigration journey. Maybe you haven't plugged it in all into a map, that's fine. But just tell us a little bit about the story and the trips and the distance that some of you and your people have taken. Thanks for watching. See you next week.